All right, let's get started. Very excited to be here. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Last session for the day, and super excited to be on this panel discussion with Andrea, Patrick, Ben. Super excited to chat about various things around AI, MLOps, data quality, data engineering. But just to start with, would you like to quickly introduce yourself? Tell us more about what you do in this space. Andrea?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Andrea Isoni. I'm Chief AI Officer at an AI consultancy company, which also means that we develop AI software bespoke for the company with a return of investment. And yeah, I have a few advisory positions. One is for ISO, International Standard Organization, on governance, and for a VC fund called Wahed Saudi Aramco.
Awesome. Patrick?
Cool. Nice to be here. Nice to see everyone here. I'm Patrick. I'm founder CEO of a company called Validio. We help large enterprises, but also scale-ups, ensure the quality of their data for AI, reporting, and compliance purposes. Working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, but also scale-ups.
Ben?
Ben Johnson. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Uptitude, and we work mostly with enterprise companies, FTSE 100, and help them with adoption of Agentic AI and generative AI solutions, and all of the fun that comes with that.
Thanks for
I
that.
ask everyone to, I struggle, I'm sure you hear us, but I struggle to hear you.
Should we come a bit closer?
Yeah, maybe a little bit closer. Same for me as well.
Sorry about that, but I'm sure for you it's fine, but for us, at least for me, it wasn't.
Now it feels like a conversation.
Yes,
Now it's happening. Okay, all right. So to get started with, we all know AI adoption is rising massively, and we all have been seeing enterprises wanting to adopt AI. But the idea of adopting AI is easy when we say it, as compared to most of the projects are still in the pilot stage. And trust me, I talk to a lot of enterprise leaders, and you all do the same. Why do you feel that is happening? Would you like to share a little bit about that? Maybe, Andrea, you can go first.
Okay, sure. It's a very complex problem. There are many reasons, but any technology, it doesn't matter what it is. There are a bit of, every big company is slow in implementation. It always will be like that. Doesn't matter if it's AI, new cybersecurity, the new quantum, whenever it will be, they will always be slow. Without saying name, a big, large bank, the biggest you can imagine, one proof of concept, one jurisdiction is about 1 year, yeah? Now, why they fail, there are many reasons, but it's important to understand what we mean by POC. My judgment, there are two types of POC, yeah? Imagine a process, whatever the process is in a company. So a process is multi-step, right? Collect data, then you analyze data, check whatever, output. Input, do something, check it, output, yes? Several steps. There are two ways to do a POC. One is you take one of these steps and you try to automatize that with an AI, for example, analyze something, AI, just that step. Or try to do the whole thing within the POC, but with a small data, yeah? Clear with that, yeah? If you do the first one, just one step, it's easy, you can accomplish that, but frankly, it doesn't solve the whole thing because the bottleneck are before, after, things like that. Therefore, the POC is successful per se, but cannot be scalable and actually is unsuccessful in the long term. If you try the other way, it's lower, way slower because you need to convince people, get multiple departments involved, the data is all around, etc. But if you can manage to do that, it's way slower, but the chance to succeed long term is way higher. So the reason why we don't say, it seems that we are not proceeding is that the one they are doing the POC with all the steps, or most of the steps, are very slow, but they're doing on the ground.
Yep.
The one they do just the one step is very quick, but then what? You need to automate all the rest, and then there is a chance of fail. So that's what you see in the market.
That's pretty insightful. Patrick, what do you think?
I mean, when I talk to a lot of data and AI leaders these days, we usually do this joke that the last 2 years, everyone wanted Gen AI. This year, everyone wants their money back, and they want to invest in setting the data foundations, right? And I think many enterprises, I mean, not everyone is failing, but if we look at the ones who are struggling the most, it's usually the ones who never invested in the data foundations. They never managed to get trusted data for even BI. They fail to do so for data products in production at scale. And then come AI, Gen AI, Agentic AI, and you try to look more into the kind of unstructured part of the data and hope that you by tapping into a new pool of data that is unlocked by Gen AI, you don't need to fix the data quality issues and data management foundations, right? And I think that's what everyone is starting to realize now. You still need to fix the same problems, right? It's even more tricky to fix it for AI than for BI, right? So, I mean, in the BI world, I usually said garbage in, garbage out. But for AI, I change it to garbage in, disaster out, right? Because with AI, you automate things. And if you automate things based on wrong input, like data, it's going to scale, right? So that's my 2 cents.
That's pretty insightful.
What I've seen is a combination. So biting off more than you can chew. So enterprises, instead of doing one thing very well end to end, the small, they try and do something quite big, and the complexity scales. The closer you get to a real solution, the complexity really, really spikes.
Yep.
And people don't appreciate that. So that's why there's so many POCs. So biting off more than you can chew. And the second one is not working on your data first. Like not having robust data, and yeah, disaster out is pretty much correct.
So what I'm kind of hearing is this can be also a cultural shift that can happen or either it's more about the cost that is involved, right? Or maybe the technical expertise that kind of go into it. According to you guys, what do you feel? Is it more like, okay, the cultural resistance that's kind of, letting us not go from plan A to plan B, and it's still staying in the pilot, or it's otherwise? Maybe, Patrick, you can go first.
Well, I think usually when there's not too much hype around a problem or a topic and domain like AI, you start with defining a real business problem. Like
Right.
what is the problem to solve? And then you apply the most suitable technology to solve that. But when it comes to AI, it has been so hyped the last few years, right? So it is a bit like the typical, you're equipped with a hammer and you should hit a few times, and then all of a sudden you start to hit the wall and make a lot of holes in it, right? So I think it's a combination of top-down pressure to adopt AI without anchoring to real problems and not having the foundations ready. And that creates resistance. There are many kind of cultural elements to it. There is the element of people fearing the change, but
Yep.
I think that's not as big of a blocker as the lack of connection to the actual business of a lot of these AI pilots. And I mean, we can say that a lot of AI projects and pilots are failing, but that depends on how you define the outcome, right? Because a lot of them are successful if you define it from a learning perspective. You learned what maybe didn't work, but that's progress somehow at the end of the day.
Yeah. Andrea, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I would be very happy if they're learning, but if I go to a client and say, look, you're gonna learn a lot, but there is no return, they will not be too much happy. I wish you that. I wish you that. But look, but you're right. There is a lot of learning. In fact, one of the things, just to quickly on that, it's not
Yeah,
the
for
question,
sure.
but it's important to understand. When you do a POC in the way, especially in an encompassing way, not one step, but all the process, 100% you're gonna modify the scope as you're doing it. Yeah, there's no, you set up front and you go linearly. So that's the learning he's talking about. Yeah, so you modify that, you learn on that, and then unfortunately the return on investment is very end. So you need to have a lot of investment. You don't see the end, and then only after a year you see, unfortunately, the return of investment that any company wants. Be clear about it, and fine. We are all here because someone at the end of the day is paying us, and there is some productivity and some profit along the way. But unfortunately, with all these things, the profit is at the end. It's not easy to foresee at the beginning. Finish one thing. In my judgment, unfortunately, the problem, especially because you need to reroute all the pipeline, all the data, etc., is because the company is structured with departments that are not necessarily have the internal wish to collaborate. So yes, it's a people problem.
Just adding on, I mean, a big part of the learning, I think, is for the upper management to appreciate the value of data foundations, right? Because it's so tricky to say we need to spend money on data management and improving quality of data until you have had that disaster out, right? So it's not the intended outcome you desired for the project, but I think nevertheless it's very valuable for the enterprise. That's why we see such a much bigger interest now on data quality. And I mean, like 2 years ago, no one wanted to talk data quality. They wanted Gen AI. Last year, they wanted data quality yesterday. Now they wanted it last year, right? So the urgency is just increasing a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Ben, what do you think?
Cultural problem.
Cultural
Absolutely.
problem.
On one
Yeah.
end, you've got the people who want to go really fast. They've got the hype. They want to go big bang, and they're probably not doing things the right way. And on the other side, you've got people who are from maybe the tech side, from the privacy side, regulatory side, slowing things down too much and putting blockers in the way when perhaps it's not required. So I think we need that middle ground approach where it's not magic. It needs a good input to be able to do its job. And it's also not the nuclear bomb potentially right now. And actually we shouldn't be putting on too many brakes considering the extreme ROI if we get it right.
Yeah, these are fantastic insights. I'm kind of also wanting to, since we are on this topic of getting AI ready, and we're talking a lot around data quality, I'm wanting to shift gears a little bit towards data quality and integration. And that definitely plays a very important role when we are talking about AI. We've seen enterprises and enterprise leaders wanting to make sure that their data foundation is right, but at the same time, they can work on their data quality. But when we kind of really go in the world, no one wants to do data quality because it's difficult. But it is important to make sure you have AI in place. Once the data quality problem, say, is solved, how do you measure the ROI? How do you measure the success? How do enterprise leaders look at that? Do you have any thoughts around that, Andrea? Maybe.
Look, if the data is structured correctly, first things you should see is that there is an assurance element of it which should reduce time, yeah? Because you see a lot of failure. I think it's kind of straightforward in a way. So once the data if you really structured correctly, you see less failing in the business when they're using the data, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the moment in which basically you have less problem of what to do with AI. Frankly, I don't see that often really, but that's usually should be the case. You see the reduction of, of complaints from the client, less block stop, less error rate when the machine learning operation, data operations, see errors, things like that. These are very measurable things.
Yep, I think that's very helpful. Patrick, what do you think?
I mean, first of all, when it comes to data quality, I think there is this kind of perception that all data needs to be fixed. At an average enterprise, I would say 5, if we want to be really kind, up to 10% of the data is actually being used. Most data is never being used. We call it the dark data, right? Data that's just sitting around. So when you want to roll out data quality and improve it quickly, and things you actually want to put into your AI models, you should focus on the 5%, and within that, maybe the top 0.1% first, and gradually, prioritize that and make it really good, right?
Very
That's
important.
how you get quick ROI. And things that you can measure is, data team operational efficiency. How much time did you spend before to get what coverage? And you can measure that quite easily, right? That's kind of the direct cost or cost savings, how much you can automate things and scale things out. But then I think the big value when it comes to data is to enable use cases, right? It's not kind of saving cost itself. That's kind of how you can pay back the investment very easily and motivate. But I mean, the value of good data quality is so closely tied to the AI or data use cases it enables. For big banks, it might be regulatory reporting. If you're wrong in your regular reporting, you can be fined billions, right? That's good value.
Yep.
If it comes to, manufacturing firms and they automate things and build data products for supply chain optimization, inventory management, so on, you need to measure the contribution of good data in those use cases, right? So I think you need to look at the direct cost savings, but more importantly, the enablement of data and AI use cases and the value attributed to them.
I really like the part where you mentioned it's about, the usage of your data. Maybe 5% of the data is only being used and the 95% is not. And you can focus on that 5% and make it best to make sure that it's working in your AI systems as well. Ben?
Yeah, practically there's a few easy ways, such as if it's going from 5% to 30% used, you could argue that maybe that's double or 6 times the value.
Yep.
Reduction in teams and dashboards, that's an easy way to measure ROI, and that's what we generally focus on. The harder one is the enablement of new stuff that you've never done before, because
Right.
that's just very difficult to put a value on. It's definitely very valuable, but it's hard to put that into a number. And so it's not that you don't try, it's just we tend to focus more on removing that manual effort, but it opens up so many more possibilities. They can't be ignored. Even if we can't really quantify them exactly, we have to make sure that they are in the business case somewhere.
I love it. I love these insights. I'm kind of also wanting to, since the time is limiting us, but I'm also wanting to touch on a few other topics like synthetic data, which is picking up very well. We've been hearing a lot about it. Where does it genuinely add value when it comes to AI pipelines? And where do you see the risks of relying too heavily on it? So kind of curious to know from the panel here. Maybe Ben, you can go first this time.
Sure. I think synthetic data is really, really good. It's fast, it's cheap. For me, the best usage of synthetic data is edge cases, which might not come around quite a lot. But because those edge cases are where a lot of the risk lies, you want to simulate that. So you want your AI models to be trained on these edge cases. So doing that in a synthetic way, I think, is very valuable. The watch outs is if you forget that you have trained your models on synthetic data. So you have to remember that it will bring all of the biases with it potentially, and you just have that in your mind whenever you are delivering the outputs. I think that's the most important thing.
That's awesome. Andrea, what do you think?
Oh yeah, look. We work with synthetic data since 2017. And reality is, as he says, a necessity. Yeah, there are industries that cannot work without synthetic data way before it was a thing. Cybersecurity, for example. You cannot expect the hacker to show you the attack. You need to prevent that, build a data set, and then you have the attack. So there are edge cases. But overall, apart if you have in edge cases / industry in which synthetic data is a must, for all the others, it's a great thing for POC. Because in a POC environment, you need someone that need to approve to release your data, whatever. If you have a synthetic data set, is a great, quick way to start any POC. I would really encourage everyone or any team to use synthetic data in a POC level, because it is a way to speed up, I don't want to say number, but a lot the process to do a POC. On top of that, believe me, the guy that do that, they do the actual nitty-gritty of building the data set, will learn much, much more of the real data set later on. It seems trivial or not important, but believe me, it makes the difference.
Okay, that's very interesting. Patrick?
Yeah, I think synthetic data, agree with both of you, good for use cases and speeding things up in proof of concept. I think whether it's applicable for in production use or not relates very much on the use case and what's the cost of errors, because synthetic data per definition is not always representative of the real world data, right? And if that's the case, you're training and adapting the AI models on something that is not representing reality. So just want to put in that cautionary note there. As much as possible, use real data. And in edge cases, I mean, there are many domains like to train self-driving cars and so on, where that makes a lot more sense. But if you look at, transaction data in a bank, and you start to create a lot of synthetic data and so on, you might bias the models tremendously, right? So the people who work with synthetic data better understand the problem domain very, very well, and better make sure that, it's very intentional and educated synthetic data that you put into those models.
Awesome. These are fantastic insights. I'm also now moving to a very important topic, which is what we've been hearing since last 1 year a lot, which is Agentic AI. But I'm wanting to know a little bit around that from a MLOps perspective, where is Agentic AI really solving all the problems that we are looking at? From a MLOps perspective, do you think, are we ready for it, or how does that look like? So yeah, anyone. I'll let you all decide who goes first. Andrea, you want to go first?
I think we're ready for it, as long as we start with the very low risk use cases.
Yep.
And let's say the power that we give to agentic AI is very, very low.
Yep.
So for example, I think the biggest use case is in low complexity interactions with humans. When people have complaints, they have questions, they need help. And so you could give certain powers to agentic AI today, which I think are okay. For example, giving a 5 to 10% discount to a customer if they've got a complaint, or making a small amount of spend up to £50. These small low-risk use cases, we're absolutely ready to use it, I think, today. And the blocker is a cultural blocker. We can definitely save billions of pounds if we start using that today. But it has to be the lower risk use cases. I think if you go even a little bit higher, the consequences of failure become much more disastrous.
Yep.
I think it also has to do with how you interact as humans with those agents, right? Because you can have a human in the loop for those, it's quite common now in the legal space to have agentic AI draft contracts and so on. But then how humans work in legal is changing quite a lot, right? But you still need to review and take that ownership, right? But you can let it do a, high risk task as long as there's a clear human in the loop.
Andrea?
No, I completely agree. In fact, I like the fact that Ben mentioned that agentic AI is great today, but only in very low risk situation. In fact, a general rule is a bad idea to take a Gen AI or any AI directly to the user.
Mm-hmm.
It can be good in low risk because, if you talk with customer service because your kettle is broken in the kitchen, nothing that disaster can happen. But many other cases are not, so it's generally, I think we are not ready, apart from low risk cases. On top of that, one trend that you see in the news is agentic AI, but the other trend is bubbling around, more in the business side rather than the consumer side, is governance, regulation, sovereign AI. Have you heard sovereign AI? There is a big trend on that, which basically means making borders or firewalls or walls for AI and data integration, which is the death of Gen AI. Gen AI works fantastic if it works correctly in a seamless environment. Yeah, everything connected, all API. This is that we are getting to a world is constantly more fragmented for political reasons, etc., which is exactly the opposite of what a true Gen AI situation, needs. So no, I don't think, generally speaking, apart from low risk cases, we are ready for it at all.
Okay, very interesting perspective there. Kind of also curious to learn, in my experience and in what I hear from enterprise leaders, many AI teams rely on APIs, partners, or external models. What are your must-haves for building a secure, scalable AI stack? And how do you balance innovation without avoiding the vendor lock-in? Any thoughts around that? Maybe Patrick, you can go first.
It's a very broad, big question. Without specifying a particular problem, it's tricky to be specific and maybe insightful enough. But a lot of the things that you do when you build agentic AI is not so much around the actual AI model itself, right? It's more the plumbing and integrations into existing workflow. Because when you want to build an AI agent, you want to automate some type of task or a role, right? And then you need to first understand the workflow or the task you're trying to automate, understand which parts can be automated with AI, and also question, as a part of that process, is the human way of doing it the optimal way when you have access to the power of AI, right? Or should you redesign it? Then it's all about building that workflow integration, so integration to the tooling. It could be software, for example, but also giving it the right context to have the right knowledge to properly, without too much hallucination, do that piece of the task that you want to automate, right? So I don't think in today's world, the fast movers on building agentic AI solutions are building their own AI models and trying to debate vendor locking and so on, because I mean, what will exist in 6 months or 12 months is going to be so much different from today. So I would just rely on what exists out there and focus more on the defining the problem, the workflow, and this, redesigning it and working on the integrations.
Andrea, as a chief AI officer, what do you think?
Well, first of all, we are at the high technology, we are vendor agnostic, so we use any platform. So
Okay.
very briefly, I can say two things. One is modularity, which goes in the line of Patrick said, which means try to define whatever the architecture or whatever the solution you build is modular, as in plug as far as you can to plug and play system. So if tomorrow someone else from OpenAI is better, just to simplify, you can switch on and off the component easily. The second aspect, apart from modularity, yeah, the architecture or whatever the solution is modular pieces, Lego bricks. The second aspect is the contract. Sorry to say, you should, as much as you can, sometimes not possible. Of a large organization, I see that happening is quite a lot. There are two things. One is liability, management of liability. We need with whatever the vendor you're using. Second is if you have data or in and out of the vendor or partner solution, put in the contract a clause for termination fee, because the event is most costly for a company is when you move out or any of these contracts, the cost of moving out the data, because it's billed by gigabyte usually or things like that, is huge. And they do on purpose, but you can negotiate that.
I think that's fantastic. Ben?
Stolen both my points, I have to say. And generically, to make sure you don't get locked in, another good one is to make sure you have enough capability in-house, so you understand enough to be able to move different vendors.
Yep.
And choose vendors that don't move to try and lock you in. So with different ways, through technology or contracts, some vendors will try to lock you in. Avoid that as much as possible.
That's fantastic. I'm glad all are on the same page. Looking ahead, talking a little bit about the future, maybe I'm not going to say 5 to 10 years because we don't know. Our space moves very quickly and the AI space moves very quickly. But in the next 2 years, how do you want enterprises to prepare themselves for tooling, process, people when it comes to AI? I feel that is like a question I'm pretty sure the hall would have as well. Any thoughts around that? Ben, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Sure. Follow what we said initially. So make sure you're looking at the data first. Don't go too fast because you'll end up with something that's unusable at the end. So do small things end to end, get that value, get that learning, focus on the data, and I would say just progress from there rather than trying to go big bang.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Patrick?
I think, I mean, relating a little bit back to the previous question about vendor locking and so on, and relying on external APIs, I think, and I'm maybe a little bit biased given what I work with, but I think the real value lies in the data and understanding of the workflow, right? So focus on improving the data and the data foundations, but also focus on involving people with domain knowledge into working with AI, right? Because this is really where the magic happens, when people with domain knowledge interact with the technology. So it's not just, we're thinking about automating exactly what exists, but we can also redesign things and make things better in ways we couldn't because we didn't have scalable enough technologies in the past.
Awesome.
I don't have much to add apart from, I think it's better if you do a POC, do a process POC, yeah? Focus on the older step encompassing them rather than one single step, automate that, because then you have bottleneck input and output that is not scalable and most of the time manageable.
These are fantastic key takeaways and great advice for what's happening in the next 2 years. For those in the hall, if you all want to catch up with Ben, Patrick, and Andrea, they are here after the session. We're almost done. So thanks for doing this. Such a pleasure hosting you all. And thank you, everyone in the room. Thanks for being a great host.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.